Okay, let's do this. So, I'm gonna try this on Sunday night, just to go over like how I quickly look over the box scores and pull out what I want to look at for the upcoming week. See where I'm wrong, and where I'm right, and kind of like this is like how the sausage is made. Another thing to kind of acknowledge is I got kind of my second kind of very politely worded comment about my bare chest of Gardner Minshew. That's not me. That's Gardner Minshew. And my rambly dissertation towards whatever outcome that I get to. Hopefully, I'll get better. Like I said, I never intended for anybody to hear this except for basically like my friends and my friend's wife who actually subbed to this. So anyway, let's get back into this. So Nico Collins is probably like the biggest winner this week. He should have already been rostered in all leagues. If he isn't, then everybody's gonna run out and say like go put your fab your waiver claims on Nico Collins. To go back to like how the sausage is made in the Nico Collins situation, the Houston Texans basically had like one starting offensive lineman play today. And CJ Stroud did not look particularly good to me in the preseason. And then week one, he's running around just trying to protect himself, doing what kind of got him drafted up the board from the national championship playoff game where he was getting chased by Georgia, and really showing what people didn't think that he had the ability to do, which is stay composed under pressure and manipulate the defenses. So anyway, like I didn't see it. And I was like, hey, the offensive line is just not going to allow him to do what needs to be done. And you can actually see with like Damian Pierce here that he's just not probably be very fantasy relevant because the offense isn't good and they're not using him enough in the passing game. But why we don't care about how the sausage is made? They're come in when you're losing your games and you just put up in garbage time. And I was watching this game. He did score early, or I didn't watch the game. Excuse me. I was watching the ticker on this game. He did score early, and then all of a sudden I looked back at it and said, "Oh my God!" 146 yards on 7 receptions, 9 targets in that early touchdown. So like how the sausage is made sometimes isn't relevant because if Nico Collins is going to continue to be the alpha for the Houston offense and CJ Stroud one way or another, because we don't care how they get there sometimes. If he can go 384 with 2 touchdowns, like that's how we don't need to know how the sausage is made because that's the box score for our fantasy situation. Like how those numbers come up sometimes aren't relevant. If Kelsey goes like 4 for 26 with 3 touchdowns and he puts up a 30-point game, like I don't care how it got there. It got there sometimes. Whether or not we pick these guys up from waivers may depend on how the sausage is made. But once they get into our lineup, no, I don't care as long as they get there. And we'll talk about Garrett Wilson a little bit later on. So the first game I want to talk about, and I was really watching this one, like, so Vegas had the over-under on the points on this one. This is why I don't really care about the over-under on the points. Vegas had the over-under on the points at like 52, and these two were like 3-0 for most of the first half. Jacksonville, and then Jacksonville really couldn't get anything done. So any kind of ideas that maybe Calvin Ridley is going to be like a top 10 wide receiver, maybe out the window. He did get 8 targets, but like I kind of was thinking that if he couldn't take over and they couldn't manipulate things, and that there's going to be other guys that are this week. This week it was Christian Kirk. Zay Jones, I think, got hurt in the game. Evan Ingram is still, a low end tight end one. But the main thing I would take out of this is like I said, I think Trevor Lawrence is never going to be elite. I think he's going to be good. He may be good for fantasy. Right now, he's not. Especially because if he can't get the rushing numbers up there, he has to be elite as a passer, and I don't see it. And I don't think the Chiefs' offense or defense is going to be necessarily that good. Isaiah Pacheco, like I was a little surprised that Clyde played today, but Isaiah Pacheco seems to be like essentially dominating things, and we get a little bit better understanding of how the offense is going to function from at least the standpoint of the wide receivers. You know, Tony was involved, which that surprised me a little bit. He's still the gadget guy. Sky Moore, you know, kind of showing why he could end up being, you know, a wide receiver too, at least in this offense. You know, because again, I don't care how the sausage is made. I think one of them was a 54-yarder, and then they targeted him in the end zone. I don't care how he got there. That's like 15 points. So like and this is a game I'll go back and watch and kind of see like why it shook out the way that it did. But like these are the things that we're kind of looking for in these games. In the Colts game, to go back to that, like I saw, because I had Anthony Richardson in one of my leagues. Anthony Richardson got knocked out with 2 concussions. Luckily, he already put up like 2 touchdowns before he did that. And Michael Pittman, like I already called this way earlier, like 12 targets is wide receiver 1 range. He may never be that efficient as he gets better. But like 12 targets, you know, 8 receptions, like this is at a minimum a wide receiver 2 because of that, the targets, how the sausage is made in this case. 12 targets, I don't care. And then the other guy I'm kind of interested in is Will Mallory, because he's basically a big wide receiver, tight end, you know, 4 or 5 guy coming out of, I think, Miami. And the fact that like a guy like this, in some regards, is just a big body clone of Michael Pittman for the RPO game. So like that's an interesting guy for me to go look up. And then Zach Moss, you know, just doing Zach Moss things in the offense, you know, 4 receptions. I haven't seen the damage behind everything, because the offense can't be run the same way with Gardner Minshew. And my boy goes out there and really puts a good day up to finish the win out for the Colts. And Zach Moss, like we were talking about, 18 for 88 and a touchdown. I'm not entirely interested in Zach Moss because I don't know how good he is as a player. They seem to like him in Indianapolis. The bigger issue is like Jonathan Taylor's coming. And unless they figure out a way to trade him, like Jonathan Taylor's coming, and you know, like he was a guy that was there. The tea leaves say play him, you get your points. Like who cares how the sausage is made? Let's see. So moving on from all of these things, trying to think. Let's see, box score in, you know, hopefully not being super rambly. Here's another good example of bad coaching. I already saw this when I left today. Green Bay was beating the Falcons, and then you have a 13-point collapse in the fourth quarter, including a drive that the Green Bay Packers had of 8 plays, and they took like 2 minutes off the clock. That's bad coaching. Like flat out, that's bad coaching. The play clock in the NFL is like 40 seconds, so a play should be somewhere between like 45, 50 seconds before the refs start the clock again. So like the fact that you're just not burning clock, you just left the time on the you left time on the clock so the Atlanta Falcons could kick the game-winning field goal late. That's on you. That's bad coaching. So Jordan Love, like, you know, I don't know how sustainable 3 touchdowns is. AJ Dillon, you know, kind of filled in for Aaron Jones, who may be like the best back in football right now. Nothing too interesting with the box scores, including Jaden Reed, because, you know, 8 targets when you have, you know, Romeo Dobbs may not be 100%, and Christian Watson's not there, and, you know, there's not a lot of depth to target. Like, that's not too interesting to me. I don't know how sustainable that is when, you know, your starting quarterback's throwing for 150 yards and your coach is trying to sabotage the win. Luke Musgrave, only 3 targets. Like, this is a little concerning to me. May not be, you know, what we want to see that tick up, you know, because he should be taking over the role of the number 1, especially with Christian Watson out. And if he doesn't, and they're not targeting him, and they're targeting Jaden Reed, that's just not a good sign. From the Atlanta standpoint, like, hey, it's good to see that, like, they let Desmond Ridder throw the football, and they kind of had to when they were behind. The interception, like, none of this is too interesting. Like, Bijan wasn't run too much into the back of the offensive line. Still 5 targets. I mean, Bijan's Bijan. That's good stuff to see. Tyler Algier, you know, not involved in the passing game, doesn't fall in the end zone. He's probably a low end RB2. This is kind of what we thought he was going to be. Drake London, you know, actually, you know, getting some targets. You know, that this is all stuff. And any thought that Kyle Pitts is almost not rosterable at this point. And How to deal with Kyle Pitts. There's probably going to be spike weeks like we see of Drake London. It's just, how many times are you going to put up a week where you lose in order to get a spike week? So I don't know if you could even find someone that would be willing to trade for Kyle Pitts. And I tried to trade Drake London in one league. It was not happening. And in another league, I tried to trade for Drake London, and it was a little bit of an overpay, and I was told absolutely not. So that's kind of your idea of where Drake London is, and I bet Kyle Pitts is going to be in the same boat. It's going to be one man's trash, another man's treasure moving forward. Let's see, the Raiders Bills. Davante Adams got off to a quick start. I saw that before I had to head out, and then he just kind of disappeared. Josh Jacobs, like I have a feeling that the Las Vegas is not going to be very good, and not good is going to affect your some of these guys like that. Staying away from not good offenses, we sort of the finding those like okay ones, but not good is one thing. And luckily he's used in the passing game. He can get keep you alive, but there isn't a lot to see from the Raiders. Good thing Buffalo looks like Buffalo. James Cook may be a league winner. No thanks to someone I know. Gabe Davis had a spike week. This is probably what's going to happen with Stephon Diggs. And if you can see Dalton Kincaid here, 5 for 43 on 6 targets, like he's their de facto wide receiver 3. He is a wide receiver or a tight end 1, and he's going to have that spike week when he falls in the end zone. Unfortunately, Dawson Knox was the guy who did that, but Dalton Kincaid is a tight end 1. So in the leagues I have Luke Musgrave, I'm thinking about dropping him. In the leagues that I have Dalton Kincaid, I can think about playing him because it's going to happen. You're going to get that spike week out of him, and this is what 7 points. For Dalton Kincaid, almost 8, and that's in a half PPR. So you throw a touchdown pass into there, and you're gonna have that that guy who helps you win a week because it's tight end and the tight end waistline. A touchdowns really are the difference when you get down to that for tight end. Ravens Bengals. Hey, sometimes the teams we thought were going to be good are bad. Joe Burrow got injured again. They weren't particularly good. Joe Mixon, probably still a volume RB2. T. Higgins has his week. Jamar Chase doesn't. That's what happens when you have these offenses without these kind of clear pecking orders. And there's going to be guys that have their weeks and the guys that don't. Like Debo had his week this week. When we get there, for the guy that I was talking to about it in the comments. So giving an idea, still don't quite know what the Baltimore attack is going to be. Gus Bus goes downhill, falls in the end zone. Those people that are the Justice Hill truthers, it's tough. They're probably going to be running back by committee as long as they can get away with it. Gus Edwards and Justice Hill have 2 entirely different skill sets. So none of this is completely interesting to me. And you see Lamar Jackson still in the running game. I mean, he's still an elite, sub-elite type of quarterback. And from the pecking order for Baltimore, Mark Andrews is still the number 1, and there just isn't a lot there outside of Zay Flowers is kind of a long handoff guy. So he's in the wide receiver 3 mix. Gonna have his spike weeks too. And then Nelson Aguilar comes out of nowhere when everybody's talking about Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman maybe making that jump. So kind of stuff to look at. Zay Flowers should have already been rostered, but we can take a look at him down the line. Seahawks Lions. This one was crazy. I was watching the ticker on this one. So the Seahawks pulled it out in overtime. I did see that. Kenneth Walker, I mean, still basically the bell cow there. I don't see the Charbonnet's not cutting into it very much. The pecking order for wide receivers, Jackson Smith-Njigba doesn't seem like he's going to be a thing. Lockett, Metcalf, they're in that wide receiver 2 type range. And they're fine. They're fine plays. Geno Smith, like this is, basically like quarter, QB1 type of range. He's startable every week. Probably better guys to have. And, and we just look at his like rushing upside. He's got just enough to make him relevant. If he can't get those high end passing games. And Jake Bobo down here, like deep sleeper. This is the guy who impressed in camp. So that's what we get out of that. I think Amon-Ra got hurt and he fumbled. Josh Reynolds, if you're wrong, you're wrong, right? I mean, if he can do, it doesn't matter how the sausage is made. If he can do this stat line or from a translated to a fantasy points, it doesn't matter how he got there. Laporta it looks like he's an RB1 or a tight end 1. These are all good things. Gibbs is exactly what we thought he was going to be. He's more than likely he's going to have like a 30-point game this year where he rushes for 100 yards and has like 100 yards receiving. It just depends on how the cookie crumbles. He did most of his damage in the passing game. Boom bust RB2 is probably like a good way to think of him. I know Montgomery went out with a leg injury. Haven't heard anything on that, but like he's doesn't get the passing volume to make up for the fact that if he doesn't fall in the end zone, like he's nothing more than RB2. So like we're seeing the usage that we're expecting from a lot of these places. There's nothing to really need to go look at like the why in all these games. So I had Josh Kelly in one of my leagues. I took him out because at the last minute because Puka was active, and I was like, okay, well Puka's going in. And then Tennessee's going to stop the run, and this is something we know, and they're going to force the Chargers to pass. And some of the hope that the Chargers are going to be special offensively are kind of going out the window. So Kelly, 13 carries, 39 yards against what is probably the best run defense in the league and for Tennessee Titans with Mike Vrabel. So like this is not to be unexpected. And then Tennessee's probably got the worst pass defense, and then we should get a Justin Herbert 500-yard passing day with like 7 touchdowns, and we don't get that. So like questions, Keenan Allen things, Mike Williams thing, and then after that, like the guys that we're looking for, taking a step up with Austin Eckler being out, Quentin Johnson's probably not going to be a thing this year. Gerald Everett can't take advantage of it, and Joshua Palmer, the number 3. So like. That the loss of Eckler probably did hurt them. I would say probably cost them like 100 yards, but like it's tough to say like, hey, this is just how you got to go out there and win. And Josh Kelly may be a handcuff still, but like this hurts his standalone value. And then from the Tennessee side, like, the big issue that I saw looking at this is Tajay Spears is probably better than Derrick Henry at this point. He didn't start the game particularly hot. I'm waiting on the snap share and all that other good information down the line. I should probably hit this for you guys so you can see what I'm looking at since staring at Gardner Minshew's chest. And then Treylon Burks, like if he should be rostered in all leagues. If he's not, like this is the tick up that we should be seeing in usage. I know he had a deep one today, 70 yards, but like sometimes we don't care how the sausage is made. They have to just get the ball into his hands. He's the best receiver that they have. And then the other guy is Chig. Finally, he was at like 80% snap share, and then he does 4 targets for 4 receptions, 35 yards. Not the efficiency that we want, but like these are the things that we want to see. And again, Tajay Spears there with 2 receptions for 6 yards on 2 targets. So like it does appear that Tajay Spears is going to be a thing in fantasy. It may not be a standalone, but again, he is the most important handcuff in all of fantasy. And if you're a Henry owner and you don't have him, well, like you better go get him. And if you just have him, then you're just waiting for that time bomb to go off. If you don't have Derrick Henry, he may end up actually having standalone weekly value. I think they're going to end up figuring out ways to get him the football. Let's see. Moving forward, Bears Bucks. Like this is another game I'm going to watch because like I want to see if Justin Fields is better. Like 2 picks, I'm not that concerned with because it's the Bucks defense and they're still pretty good. So for all you Roshan truthers out there, like when you're wrong, you're wrong. In my case, I'm wrong. Like what's Deonta Foreman was a healthy scratch, and Roshan gets 4 carries, rips off a 29-yarder, and then he's got 2 more receptions. So like I definitely could see at this point that they're going to flop and Roshan becomes the lead back and Khalil Herbert comes like the change of pace guy. Um, but the bigger issue still is Justin Fields, like only 4 carries. Wow, I didn't even see that until now. One of them was a touchdown. You know, if that goes to Roshan, that kind of changes the day. And you know, he's got to be a better passer. But this is a game that I probably will be watching to see exactly what's going on, to see if Justin Fields is getting better, because I don't care necessarily about the stat line, and we'll talk about Zach Wilson here in a second. That sometimes I just don't care about the stat line. I care about like what's going on, to see how things are going. And DJ Moore bounces back. You know, don't love the targets, but I love the outcome. And you know, like we're moving in the right direction there. And then Mike Evans is probably going to be this year's you know, fantasy MVP, at least from a value standpoint, because I think he was going for like a 6th, 7th round in some leagues. And you go, you know, even if he doesn't do a lot the rest of the season, you know, 6 for 70 or 171 and a touchdown. I mean, that's great. And then Rachaad White actually like kind of turns the corner. May actually, you know, sneak back into that RB1 range. Sean Tucker probably not going to be a thing. That's just like not good enough efficiency when the lead back is actually able to do something. So like these are interesting things. Cade Otton is another guy. You'll probably the number 3 there in Tampa. You know, if he can stay going, you know, 6 for 41 on 6 targets, and Chris Godwin, like, just probably doesn't mesh well with Baker Mayfield's playing style. But like these are the things that we're looking at, and like, you know, sneakily something to look at. Baker Mayfield pretty close to a fantasy relevant day, and he's a little nimbly bimbly. So like, yeah, you're getting there with Baker May. You know, especially in 2 quarterback leagues, I can definitely get on that if he can keep this up. Chiefs Jaguars, we already talked about that. I think there was something else I wanted to look at. Probably not. Who knows? Colts Texans, we kind of talked about a little bit already. Nothing too interesting there. And Rams 49ers, this is an interesting game. So I was following this. I was out and about, you know, doing things. Brock Purdy just being efficient. You know, Christian McCaffrey going to probably be RB1. Deebo Samuel, this is why you paid for him. The gentleman I was talking to in the chat, you know, getting the extra 5 for 38 on the ground along a 17 and a touchdown. This is what pulls him back into that weekly boom bust type category for like wide receiver 2, like why he's valuable, because it's his week. And then you see Brandon Ayuk like 3 for 43. This is why they're dangerous. George Kittle 3 for 30. Like you're gonna have weeks where it's not their weeks. The only guy to really own in this offense is Christian McCaffrey, because there's probably never going to be a week where it's not his week. And you even see like Brock Purdy from a standpoint like you know, the rushing touchdown, because he is a little bit like deceptively nimbly bimbly, really saving his week, because that's going to be like what, 14 points. So like there we go. You know, Matt Stafford 2 interceptions, but when you can go out against maybe like the most elite, or if not the elite defenses, and really make it close. I was following this game on the ticker. There definitely, this is another thing to look at and go like, hey, thankfully he was able to keep the fantasy scoring down, because like he needs to be rostered. Again, if the passing volume stays up, then he can compete with any of the other guys in the league. And then Kieran Williams, you know, like 14 for 52 and a touchdown, like not the burstiest guy, but the offense doesn't need to be set up that way. The biggest issue today was like Cam Akers was a healthy scratch, and it just seems like it's Kyren Williams' backfield at this point. Like Cam Akers, I heard reading one of the rumors that they're shopping him. So it's Kyren Williams, and then the other thing with him, like this is the main reason for Kyren Williams. If they're so pass heavy that they're just going to be like, we'll get whatever we get out of you in the running game, because in the passing game, you know, 10 targets, 6 for 48 and a touchdown. Puka, there's our boy, 15 for 147 and 20 targets. You know, Tutu for the gentleman I did talk to earlier about Tutu. If he's your guy, go get him. That's 7 for 77 on 9 targets. That's really approaching like wide receiver 2 land. Van Jefferson, probably not a thing. The interesting thing is like the pecking order, if and when Cooper Kupp comes back, I probably would say that Cooper Kupp and Puka are probably going to be like wide receiver 2s, and that's going to probably hurt Tutu a little bit, boom bust wide receiver 3, but that's a little bit down the line for us to have to worry about. But I am going to go back and watch this game, especially from the standpoint to see the Rams offense function, because the leagues where I got Kyren Williams, like I played Puka, I got my points, but the leagues that I had Kyren Williams, and I was surprised that he snuck through on a lot of the leagues. He's probably a weekly starter, especially in the RB2 range. This 10 targets for 6 catches, that's a weekly floor that you got to have. So he already should be rostered. Let's see. Giants Cardinals is another one I was looking at. Because I had like my main money league, I had the Giants defense, and they went down 20-0, and they were able to come back. And I was also a little disappointed because Darren Waller did nothing, and then he puts up the same amount of points as Travis Kelce does today. And again, I talk about Jalen Hyatt. He's a guy to look at. This is what he's going to do. He's going to take the top off that defense. Isaiah Hodgins is another guy to be looking at. Like, this is why you kind of have to let the beginning of the season play out, the arms race. Daniel Jones is, I think, the quarterback 1 this week against a bad Arizona offense, but we don't care because he turned it around. He is a running quarterback on top of being able to potentially put up these numbers. If they get this offense right, and I'm a little bit more worried about the defense at this point, like this is bad news for everybody else. And Saquon rolled an ankle. I don't know exactly how they would handle that at this point. They have God, I can't remember his name. They have a rookie that they kept on the roster, Chris Gray, I think his name. That's something to look at, because hopefully they deal with Barkley the correct way and let him sit out until he's 100%. And they were able to get the victory today. And Steve Slayton, still maybe relevant. Another game that I'm going to look at. And then Josh Dobbs is not a bad quarterback in the NFL. He's not a good one. He's probably one of the better backups. He can go 50-50 for you when you need him. James Conner, that ugly RB2 type range, getting him in, just all on the ground today. Nothing particularly interesting with the exception of Michael Wilson doing 3 for 56. He's a big receiver. This is vertical stuff. I want to just watch this game for his 3 targets. That's all I care about is these 3 targets. And again, Zach Ertz doing 8 targets, 6 for 56. Like, depending on what your league is, that's a weekly starter at tight end. So that's interesting to see. I didn't think he would keep it up, but like that's what they're going to do. And again, I think it's Trey McBride may not be a thing. Jets Cowboys. So this is another game I said, like, it doesn't matter how the sausage is made. Garrett Wilson had 8 targets. He had a 68-yard touchdown and another catch. He got knocked out, quote unquote, with the wind was knocked out of him. Don't care how I get my 15 points. I get my 15 points, but this is not encouraging, except for the fact that this is probably an elite level Dallas offense, our defense. And again, like I said, like these situations like Tony Pollard, where they just don't need some of these guys to put up points this week. I think it was CeeDee Lamb week. They just don't need these things. Like Jake Ferguson, who had like 92% snaps. He falls in the end zone. He's in the mix for tight end. They just don't need Tony Pollard to do anything. They're just going to go out there and beat the other team with their defense. So Zach Wilson is not necessarily a downgrade. I don't like how the coaches deployed Breece Hall, because they have an entire 6 touches for the guy, and he may be on a pitch count, but like just the overall efficiency of the usage is not indicative of good coaching. And Dalvin Cook is probably not a think. I mean, he fumbled. The biggest thing I think it got out of Dalvin Cook was nothing. So like that, there's not a lot here. But Zach Wilson, I think he threw one of the picks early. 2 of them came late, as when they were behind, trying to get them back into it. So like this is not necessarily a panic mode for the Jets. Like this is, they did it last week. They being the Cowboys, they did it to Daniel Jones. This week, them doing it to Zach Wilson is not necessarily something to be concerned with, because we got to see not them be the Jets playing like maybe a better play style, a better matchup. They have a bad defensive matchup the rest of the year, but it doesn't mean that the coaches are going to deploy their weapons the way that they did this game against an elite defense. So again, I am going to watch this game. I want to see if Zach Wilson was what he looked like at the beginning of the game, when he looked like he was game managing. And that's all we really need to keep Brees and Garrett Wilson not just fantasy relevant, but like towards the elite side of the spectrum. That's what we want to look at. And if you didn't hear, Aaron Rodgers is planning on trying to come back this year on that Achilles, probably not till playoffs. So if they can stick around, that's something interesting to monitor, that they may not be tanking in for the Jets. This game I'm going to be looking at, a little surprise, like Sam Howell. Like this is why we got to play it out. Like Sam Howell going 2 touchdowns against what we thought was a good Denver Broncos defense. Brian Robinson, the bell cow, putting up like 25 points in the passing game and as a runner, 2 touchdowns. Probably never going to be the most efficient guy in the world. That's not what we're expecting. I don't see Antonio Gibson probably does still have some juice left in him. I don't see Rodriguez. So these are the things I'm looking at. McLaurin, even though he's probably still not healthy, it's good to see that he's probably working his way back. And then the Jahan Dotson. The problem is they're just not going to be a good, consistent offense. It's most likely what's going to occur. And then, how good they're able to be on a week-to-week basis, but they're 2-0, and that's kind of interesting also. So I might have to take a look at that to see if they're just as bad as I thought. Denver being Denver, like Russ had a fantasy relevant week. I'm just looking at stat line. He was a little nimbly bimbly. Javonte Williams isn't a thing. If you're worried, Samaje Perine isn't a thing. The guy to look at for Denver is Jaleel McLaughlin. He's like way undersized. He's like 5'7", like 180 pounds. He did have a touchdown late in the game. They like this guy, and if they continue to give him touches, because he had 1 catch last week, they continue to keep him in the game plan. It's just going to take away from Javonte Williams ever being a thing, because design plays are one of the most important parts of fantasy football from an efficiency standpoint. Teams are trying to get you the ball in situations that matter. So them getting the ball to Jaleel McLaughlin in the red zone is a big deal. It's also a big deal because it didn't go to Javonte Williams. And then from a passing standpoint, like Marvin Mims, I was not really interested in, but like, hey, a 60-yarder, I got to go back and find that one, see if I care. Cortland Sutton, doing Cortland Sutton things. Jerry Jeudy, that's not going to be that type of year for these guys. Again, not a good enough offense to really support anybody being fantasy relevant, more than likely. And the Dolphins, Patriots, the surprising couple of things out of this game that from the ticker is that the Dolphins defense may be a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. And New England's defense may not be quite as good. But New England may have the best defense in football, and for them to be able to really slow down Miami, like that's why I say, like, putting up 466 and having Tyreek Hill go for 200 yards is not sustainable. I shouldn't have to say anybody that. And then you get a Jalen Waddle week on top of that. Like the guy to own on the offense this week is kind of Jalen Waddle and not Tyreek Hill, even though Tyreek Hill fell into the end zone and kind of saved his week. And then other guys to look at, Durham Smythe, not really a thing. Solomon Ahmed, that this surprised me. Like so A-Chain was active. He didn't play at all in the first half. Solomon Ahmed went down with a groin. I think A-Chain started the second half, had 1 carry and 1 reception. I don't think Ahmed came back in the game, but Mostert just basically like iced it with like a 43-yarder late in the game. So like, if you're wrong, you're wrong. Devin Achane doesn't look like he's going to be a thing, but I'm not going to drop him until I see what goes on with Ahmed. If he's out, then I'm still probably stashing Achane. I don't particularly trust Mostert to be healthy the entire year, but like the specter of Jeff Wilson is there. It doesn't appear that like Achane is going to be a thing. Like if they didn't plan to utilize him early in the game and he was just operating as the emergency like third string running back, that's not a good sign. So like that's something I'm taking away. And then over there on the New England side, like odd usage for Zeke and Mondre. Mondre took over the game late. You're drafting probably the best receiving back in football that can thump when he needs to. Saves his day with a touchdown, but usage wise, Zeke was in early again, which again is interesting. And then Hunter Henry, moving towards being tight end 1 on the year right now, which is interesting. Devontae played. Kendrick Bourne wasn't a thing. So like there is a little bit to look at about how I would be interested about how they're deploying Devontae versus Kendrick Bourne, but like they're not vertical guys, which kind of hurts them a little bit. So anyway, those are the things I'm kind of looking at. And then I think we talked already about the Vikings Eagles like stash Ty Chandler because like they can't continue to be that bad in the running game with Madison. And then Saints, Panthers, and Browns, Steelers. I don't know how many people have roster spots available, but like Mingo and Marshall stash for the Panthers. Chuba Hubbard should be rostered if you have available spots open for the Panthers. What's his face? Shaheed for the Saints should be rostered. Let's see. Elijah Moore for the Browns should be rostered. Calvin Austin, if you're into that type of thing, or Allen Robinson should be rostered. I haven't heard anything about George Pickens' hamstring yet, but that's just kind of like how the sausage is made for me. You got 37 minutes. I don't know how many people are going to be like paying attention to it, but that's just like my quick take. And then over the next couple days between now and Tuesday, I'll be just like kind of perusing stats and tape to see what I think. And then, if I need to kind of confirm what I think, like the same channels you guys watch and the same articles you guys read. So anyway, that's all I got for today. And yeah.